Tonight, a small step toward sending astronauts to Mars. A UConn professor recently returned from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where he and 3 volunteers spent 45 days living in isolation. And for the very first time, he is sharing his out-of-this-world journey with a television audience. For as long as Jason Lee could remember, he felt a gravitational pull towards space travel.
I always wanted to be an astronaut. Even as a kid, my dad was a propulsion engineer in California, so I always watched rockets launch. So that was like a dream.
And for a half summer, the University of Connecticut professor turned that dream into reality, suiting up and putting on the NASA badge to join 3 other volunteers for a once-in-a-blue-moon adventure.
It was incredible. I tell people it's like a space camp for adults.
At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, the crew climbed inside a human exploration research analog habitat, getting a glimpse of what a long-duration space journey entails.
We were in a habitat, 650 square feet, like a small apartment with 4 crew members. We were there for 45 days. And it was testing isolation.
It's all part of a study by NASA that simulates what astronauts would experience on a real mission to Mars, something NASA is hoping to do by the late 2030s.
They would simulate the pressurization and depressurization of the airlock. Basically, that was our way of simulating walking out of the habitat, going onto the Martian surface.
Volunteers spent their days conducting experiments, navigating stressful scenarios, and living on shelf-stable food.
We had camping food, essentially. So we had a microwave and hot water. So it was dehydrated food, a lot of nutritional bars. So a lot of us lost weight. I lost 15 pounds in there just because it's just calorie deficit.
They also stuck to strict schedules, keeping their minds and bodies active, similar to what actual NASA astronauts do up in space.
Keeping them busy is very important. But in isolation, if you're just sitting there and you have nothing to do, that can be mentally very difficult.
But Dr. Lee says living in isolation and confinement has its challenges.
Missing family, that was a big part of it. We got to communicate with family once a week. And then as time delay increased, because we're simulating flying to Mars, so the further we got into the mission, the longer the delay became.
Dr. Lee plans to apply what he learned about teamwork and stress management in his teachings at UConn, and hopes the research from his test group helps NASA as it plans its next shoot for the stars.
I think the moon is something that we should explore. I think Mars is right there. It's within our grasp. I think we should explore as much of space in general as possible.
NASA will be using data from this group and others to determine how to best support crew health and performance as it plans to send astronauts to the moon and eventually to the red planet.
And Dr. Lee would like to go to Mars if he had the chance. He would go.
He would go to the moon, go to space, anything to explore.
Yeah. All right.
Would
Very
you?
Interesting.
If it was free, would you go?
I'd have to think about it. I've got
the pros
people
and
here on
cons?
Earth I would miss too much, I'm afraid.
That's the problem.